Okay, so we're going to start this briefing. Welcome to people in the room, those are joining us on Zoom and on the live stream. So we're just continuing our long-term plan deliberations as we approach our final decisions. And we have an extra report that we've requested with some more financial information, which will be coming to our council meeting on Thursday. So I welcome Mark and Cheryl, who are going to take us through the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone. So we have a series of slides just to take you through. The first slide is I think I just need to turn this on. It's a very nice slide. Sorry about that. Look, we'll skip through this one. This was just the resolutions that were passed at last week, and so we're coming back on Thursday to reconsider resolutions B and C. So that's what was decided on last week. Just a helpful little table. So the decisions that were made last week, we made some changes to some fees and charges, how you fund the three waters, and we finished on the day at a rates revenue increase after growth of 12.25%. Those were just with some additional funding and some changes to fees and charges. We're going to talk to you about a couple of scenarios that involve the 12.25, which we'll call 12%. But if you, because we're only reconsidering resolutions B and C, we've just put on the table, if you were to change the decision and fully rates fund the three waters, it would mean that you're not paying that interest, and the rates increase for year one would go to 17.19. That reflects the additional funding and the changes to those fees and charges. So there's two numbers that we'll refer to, 12.25 and 17.19. Right. So what we've done. So last Thursday, there were quite a few questions on if we went 12.6, what impact does that have on the financial strategy? And so what we said is it slows everything down. We couldn't say hand on heart whether we were okay, but just at a very high level, it just would obviously, you'd have to take, per annum, you'd need to take on $4.7 million of debt to fund the shortfall on the three waters, and it would reduce the planned debt reduction compared to the 17.7 or the 17.6. So just trying to show you today what impact it has. So we've brought to the table, I guess, two more scenarios. So the table is showing what happens at a 10-year view if you had rates increase in year one of 12, and then you had 7% from years 2 to 10. And what would it look like if you had 12% in year one with 8% in years 2 to 10? And actually, what does it look like? What does 12% in year one and 6% in years 2 to 10 look like? So we've actually just summarised this in a table. This is the 10-year view. So a lot of these ratios on this table are actually sitting at the 10th year, so 33, 34. So we've got so option number 2 is the 17.6. So that was officers' recommendation last week, but as you know, option 3 was voted on. So and I'll step you through. So we're just really going to stay in this vicinity. The first two columns is if right at the starting point when we were developing our consultation document, we showed the difference between going out and reducing debt or not at all. And so that just summarises what does 17% in year one and 7% year 2 to 10, what does that achieve versus not doing anything at all. So, but we're going to stay today between the options 2 and 5. Okay, so, and I'll take you through that. So So option 3, and I'm just going to work down the table nice and slowly. So by transitioning to 12.25 in year 1 and 6, and we'll call it 12.6. So but 12.6 reduces rates revenue by $63 million over the long-term plan. So that's obviously reduces the amount of rates that ratepayers have to pay, but it also does reduce what the financial strategy is intending to do, is to reduce debt. So the difference in rates revenue is 63 million. When we look at rates affordability, our proxy was taken as 7%. It's sitting at 33.34. So when we look at that, it changes from 7.5. Well, the affordability rates affordability is 6.6, sitting at 33.34 on 12.6. So I'm just walking down this column 3. The debt headroom, so you achieve a debt headroom of 231 million. So not as good as option 2. Option 2 was 284. So your debt headroom is less because you're actually borrowing money to fund your operating costs. So you're taking on debt and you're reducing less. So your net debt is higher than option 2. Then your debt headroom is less. Your net debt at 33.34 is 381 million, higher than 352. Your net interest charge is $1 million higher at year 10 on that option because you've taken on more debt. It's interest on interest. And then the total debt reduced is $30 million under 12.6 compared to 63 if you did 17.6. So you're getting less revenue, and so you're taking on more debt, less revenue, so you're reducing less and you're paying more in interest. Your net debt to revenue is sitting at 186% at year 10. That's really good. The financial strategy, the limit's 280%. Our preferred, we'd like to be below 250. So it's sitting in 186. So it's a good position. And then the last column, we just have a look at the, and I'll show you the charts, but we just have a look at the debt reduction year on year. And what we're saying is, and it's an officer classification, that we're saying how long does it take before you are reducing debt by $10 million or more in one single year? And it takes us 10 years to get there as opposed to option 2, which was 6. So if I could just compare you from 3 to no reduction, and then I'll take questions. So 12.6 still reduces debt. It does take more debt on because we have the shortfall in funding. So we're not fully funding the Three Waters costs. We're borrowing money to do that. But if you look at the position of option 3 compared to not reducing debt at all, the council will make headroom. It is still better off. It's better off than if it wasn't doing anything. And you can just see that. You can see debt headroom, if we didn't do anything, would be 170. Under 12.6, it's 231. So you've got to, there is progress. It's not as much as 17.7, but there's progress there. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions. I'll move into column 4. So column 4 and column 5 you've never seen before, nor have we. And so following the meeting, there's been lots of work on financially modelling so that we can tell you. If you go 12.6, what does it mean if you go 12.7? Because the financial strategy has said that from years 2 to 10, it's the range 6%, 7%, 8%. So if we just go through column 4, if we look at the rates revenue, because it's 7, so it's an extra 1% rates revenue from years 2 to 10. Over that period, you actually end up rating $6 million more than option 2 because it's 7%, not 6%. Even though it's a lower base, over time, you actually get more rates revenue. The affordability compared to 3 does go up. So, because our rates revenue's gone up. And so it sits at 7.2. So option 4 is, in terms of rates affordability, is lower than our 17.7. So it's not 7.5, it's 7.2. Then we've got the debt headroom of $347 million. So that's far better than option 3. And it's actually better than option 2. And that's because of the compounded impact of a 7% rates increase year on year. We can actually reduce more debt. We're still, for options 3, 4, and 5, we're still borrowing in year 1 to fund the shortfall. We're still borrowing in year 2, but 4 and 5 get us to rate surpluses faster. So staying on option 4, the net debt sits at 312 at 33. Net debt is 312, lower than option 3, lower than option 2. Not as good as option 1. Then the net interest, it's $18 million a year because you've retired more debt. So the interest of the debt that we're still holding has come down. So that's 18 million. Now the total debt reduction for the long-term plan under that option is 99 million. So better than option 3. It's actually better than option 2, not as good as option 1. Our net debt to revenue is 145%. So that's fantastic. It's phenomenal. And it's not as good as 1, but it's better than 2 and 3 again. And then option 4 takes us 8 years before we're actually reducing $10 million or plus per annum. So not as good as 1, same as 2, better than 3. And then option 5 was looking at 12.8, only because the financial strategy is saying 6 to 8%. So we wanted to have a look. We were a little bit curious. And so the compounded impact of an 8% rates increase is you'd actually be taking $79 million more in rates than the 17.6 over the 10-year period. So not surprisingly, rates affordability goes up to 7.8. So that's above option 1 of 7.5, where we said our proxy was 7. The debt headroom, phenomenal. 470 million compared to, it's even better than option 1 at 411. I mean, that's real resilience right there. Net debt, 239 million at year 10. It outperforms option 1, but it's not as affordable as option 1. And just working our way through, net interest comes down to 16. So it's the least net interest cost in year 10 of all the options. The total debt repaid is it outshines option 1 and it reduces our debt by 172 million. That's going 12 and 8% year on year from years 2 to 10. The net debt to revenue lands the council at 106%, and it takes us 5 years before we're starting to reduce debt by 10 million or more a year. And I'll show you some charts. So that table is just summarising probably lots and lots of words. So we'll go through. I'll just wait for questions. I'll keep going. So we wanted to show you some.
Sorry, I have a question online.
Yeah. Hi, Liz. What
Hello.
time is it there?
It's about 9 something. I've just come back from a Broadway show.
Yeah. You've finally got your nighttime meeting, Liz.
Yeah. I did, yeah. Just about lost my voice because marijuana is freely available here. And it's
you do realise we're live streaming, Liz?
Okay. Well, I'm not high on marijuana.
That's good to hear. Okay.
Anyway, look, I just have a question because I'm worried about what the impact is on ratepayers, because what I see there is that over a 10-year period, ratepayers are actually paying a whole lot more than what they would otherwise, with option under the first column there. So, although the per year amount might be less initially, they're paying more per year after that. And if you look at the total rates paid by people over that 10-year period, it appears to be a lot higher. Am I correct in that assumption? Or if not, can you please explain to me how the ratepayer is affected by this? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. You are correct. So the table on the screen is showing that option 4, the ratepayer is paying more, and in option 5, they're paying more than option 2.
So I think that is something we need to pay a lot of attention to, because the whole idea here is to be providing, you know, a reasonable scenario for our ratepayers. It's not about what's good for council. Well, it is partly about that, but primarily it's what is the best outcome here for for the ratepayers, you know, given the scenarios that we're, you know, the financial constraints that we have. And I think we need to bear that in mind, that, you know, that's really where we need to be coming at this from, is what's, although there might be, you know, a little bit more pain
Marijuana
initially
kicking
in
in.
terms Pardon?
It's a marijuana kicking in.
Oh my God, he managed to turn on his microphone and say that. Okay.
But do you follow my drift? I just really want to look at it also from the ratepayer's perspective.
Yeah, so I think that would that, Mark, involve looking at the first column, the change in rates revenue? So the other thing to bear in mind, would this be right, is that if you vary too much in terms of rates revenue, you're looking at significant late changes in levels of service, which we haven't consulted on.
That's right.
Yeah, so
That's
to
right.
do things, you need to fund them. Yeah. Nigel?
Yeah, great minds. I had written down service cuts and appropriate levels of service, and appropriate levels of consultation around that. So given the nature of the LTP and what we did consult on, and to make cuts to levels of service, and I think you'd mentioned that would probably necessitate a qualified audit. Does it potentially throw council under the bus in terms of what we did consult on or didn't consult on if there's such a major variation?
Yeah, thank you, councillor. So, if you were to change levels of service and you haven't consulted on it, that would trigger the significance of engagement policy, which would require you to consult. You haven't, so we've breached the Local Government Act, and it would be a qualified opinion. In terms of the, so that's the brutal reality. If you make a change that is so material from what you consulted on, will definitely get qualified. But that's just qualifying the LTP. You'd want to consult on levels of service as opposed to just cutting expenditure out. So when we've modelled this scenario, we have assumed the status quo. Our levels of service remain the same, our operating expenses remain the same, our CapEx program remains the same. This is just the impact on revenue, and the 1225 is increasing at 7%, or we looked at if we increased that by 8%. So we're keeping everything the same. So we haven't assumed any reduction to your operating costs, but at the moment you go to 12, well, you're borrowing money because you've got a rates funding shortfall in year 1 of 4.7, which then follows into year 2 and year 3 until the rates revenue reaches a point that it closes that gap. Yeah. So just to be clear, we have not factored in any changes to levels of service for today's presentation.
Okay, and my other question is, at 17%, my understanding is that, not that I'm giving any credibility to Standard & Poor's or Moody's, but if we had to, our risk profile and our credit rating. So is there, because we know the impact of having a higher or lower, it's directly impacts your interest rate. So what's the likely scenario there? If we say from the 17 to the 12?
So Standard & Poor's have visited us, or S&P Global have visited us recently, and they've actually downgraded the local government institutional framework because of the uncertainty with the Three Waters reform. So we've lost a couple of notches already without our doing. They have said to us, you have fantastic budget, it's called budget flexibility. As local government, you have the ability, ignoring the political arena, you have the ability to increase rates to cover your costs under the Local Government Rating Act, under the Local Government Act. So they find the local government framework such that you can recover your costs. And they did say to us, with such increased costs on the local government sector, they will not look favourably on councils that don't exercise that ability to increase the rates revenue. However, that being said, that's just one dynamic. They will look at our capital works program and the deliverability, and they will look at our debt levels. And so the financial strategy is doing all of that all simultaneously. But we know to keep our AA negative outlook, without doing anything, we've already lost a few points on the institutional framework going down. So if we are debt funding operating costs, that'll have an impact on our credit rating.
So, I mean, the takeaway obviously is that debt funding OPEX is never really a good idea. But again, just the predicate over the span of the plan is interest rates at 4.5, I think. I don't know if you built in a margin.
Yeah, so we've got, in terms of our financial assumptions, I think we're 4.67% over the first 3 years. Then I think we ratchet down to 4.5 over the next 3. So I think it's I stand to be corrected, but we've used 3 different interest rates over the 10 years in 3-year blocks.
Right.
Which is very, by chance, it's very close to our weighted average cost of capital, but it's based on local government indices.
That's right. And so we've got that, is it fixed over a period, over 3-year periods or longer?
The interest calculation. So our interest calculation is...
No. So, sorry, not the calculation,
Yeah.
but the actual borrowing. So if we've borrowed X, how long have we borrowed it for a fixed term, or it's all floating?
Yeah. All our debt is on floating. In terms of the duration of that debt when it matures, depends on what the market is. So we've got no debt that exceeds 10 years. So we've just assumed that right now we'll continue to borrow short, and then in terms of the model, it's applying the interest rate on what is the estimated debt on the books at closing.
Okay, and just my last point is that if you were to predicate the out years on a, say, 5.67%, so there was a 1% hike, and depending on how you want to look at the markets, personally the way I would frame them is that it's more likely to go up than down. So if that was to be the case, the debt profile at 12% would then be significantly different than at 17.
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Okay, I've got Liz online, but I just want to clarify something first. So the Standard & Poor's, I'm a little bit concerned about that because we had a response on Thursday to say that a decision around going to 12% probably wouldn't impact on our credit rating. And I think I'm hearing today that it would. So I mean, that's really important, not just for us reputationally, but it affects our interest rates, which would then impact even further on, the interest rates going forward. So, I know it's crystal ball gazing and we don't know what they're going to say, but I've just got two kind of different directions, and I'm just
Yeah.
wondering which is.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So look, just to clarify, S&P will run their models and make their decisions. What I was indicating that if we, so going 12%, we are still flexing our budgets to cover our inflation, to cover the increase in depreciation. So we are still flexing up. We're not in the single digits. We need to go to 17, but we're going 12 because that was the decision that was made. So that in itself, the fact that we have gone higher to cover our costs will probably be received well. And the councillors have actually taken $99 million out of the CapEx program, and the financial strategy is still reducing debt. So all that together, we're likely to be still on negative outlook. If we were 17, so we had flexed our budgets to the maximum required, that would fall more favourably on S&P. So we're trying to actually get to a stable outlook. We're trying to actually get an uptick from negative to stable. But as we said to Standard & Poor's or S&P, we said, look, we understand that you've downgraded the institutional framework. So what is it that we need to do to maintain or get to a positive outlook? And so that's work. They can't advise us. They said they can't tell us what to do, but we know what they look at, and we know that, and that's why we've reduced the CapEx program.
Liz?
Thank you. Look, I just wanted to pick up, Mark, on your comment about the government's reaction. I'm not sure that I fully heard everything you said, but what I think I understood was that the government would not look favourably upon us shielding ratepayers from cost increases, because as I see it, there is a deliberate strategy here on the part of the government to reduce real net incomes, to curb spending and therefore control inflation. So by council kind of absorbing, if you like, some of the cost increases, that doesn't help the government strategy at all. Is that, have I interpreted what you said correctly in that regard?
Oh, thank you, Councillor. No. What I was saying that Standard & Poor's have downgraded one aspect of their rating, which is they look at the institutional framework of local government, and they've said from their perspective, the local government framework has weakened because of the uncertainty imposed on us by central government. The reforms. Is water staying or going? RMA changes. So they just think that what central government are doing are creating uncertainty for local government, so it's difficult to plan. So they are downgrading. They thought that the institutional framework was excellent. It's being downgraded to good. But when they do that,
sorry, can I just interrupt you? This wasn't a question about the Standard & Poor's rating. There was a comment you made sort of before we began talking about Standard & Poor's, which was along the lines of what I just mentioned earlier, that us not fully passing on the costs to our ratepayers would not be looked upon favourably by the government. Did I not understand that correctly?
I don't remember that. Are you sure it's not? It must be the marijuana.
No, sorry, Councillor. No, I didn't say that. I only referred to the Crown based on my response to the S&P Global question.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I've obviously misunderstood that, but I do think that is a point, though, that there is, we are in an economic environment where people's incomes, net real incomes, are being reduced, or where their costs are being increased in order to curb spending. And I think we have to keep that in mind, that there is there are people hurting out there financially, but that is a deliberate strategy on the part of the government to bring our economy back into shape. And I think we need to view this in that context. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz. Cam?
All right, a more appropriate statement this time. I'm always interested in how we compare with other councils and bits and pieces, and I know there's been a lot of publicity about the first year rates increases across the country and what people are looking at. Has there been much information coming out, or have you been looking at what they're looking at for their year 2, year 3s? And, how do we sit? I mean, are we an outlier with the 6% or the 7 or the 8? Or are we roughly in tune with other councils in terms of rates increases?
RGNZ did a piece of work around this. I'll see if I can find it while Mark thinks about an answer.
Yeah, thank you. So, look, we've obviously kept a little watching brief, more out of interest and also just wanting to see how the affordability constraints that were imposed on us, how that was imposed on other councils. But if we consider Greater Wellington and the Hutt, Greater Wellington have got double-digit rate increases over the first 3 or 4 years, and then they drop right down to sort of 3%. So it's higher than us in the first years, lower than us in the out years. The Hutt, or Lower Hutt, are a little bit higher than us in the out years. And I guess affordability.
The same, or?
Yeah, I would say anecdotally we're a little bit lower than many in the out years.
Cool. Okay,
So some councils are definitely facing significant cost pressures in the future. They're also getting close to their debt limits, so they have to go double digit, whereas we're going single digits.
Okay, cool. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I can't find that other piece of work, so I think that answers that question sufficiently anyway. Lawrence?
That's right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the work that's gone into creating this table for us. And I've forgotten what my question is.
Let's move on to the next
Let's move on to the next one. It will come back to me. My apologies.
So before is this? So I've moved to the next slide, but before I do, I just wanted to clarify what I said. That S&P Global said to us. They said that the local government sector has the ability to increase budgets to cover costs, and where councils are not doing that, they're taking on debt. So where councils are taking on debt and their debt levels are getting higher to their debt covenants, it will impact on their credit ratings. So that's what I said earlier.
Sorry, who's... Oh, David.
Can I just
Sorry,
make a
I'm
quick comment? I mean,
absorbed in the
S&P
table.
will make the decisions based on this council, not what other councils do. But comparisons are always relevant. And I would presume that there are a few other councils who are taking on debt reduction to the extent that this council is. That's the first point I would make. Second thing I think they will look at is the debt funding of operation costs, which is regarded as a bad thing. This applies for, correct me, this is just a 2-year situation where that applies? No, right through?
Right through.
Okay. And the other comment I was going to make was that in terms of government, I think government is concerned about the rate of inflation too, of which insurance costs, God forbid, and rates are a significant component. So, I mean, the government really is concerned. It hasn't said as much. It said, oh, they have no major plans to change the rating system or anything like that. But sure as hell, they must be concerned about the rate of inflation, the way in which this rating issue, as well as insurance, as well as others, is driving up the rate of inflation and stopping interest rates coming down. Anyway, just a quick comment.
That's very helpful. Thanks, David. Nigel?
Yeah, I take up that point as well, and it looks very much like the current government is in the process of introducing legislation that would allow councils to vastly increase the amount of debt that they have. So those debt ceilings are going to rise, particularly around the three waters. They're saying, yes, you can't afford it, but we're going to let you get into way more debt than you are now. Of course, we've only got one place to get the money from to pay for the debt, right? So I'm just wondering about what, and this is probably a little bit blue sky, but if that is the case across the sector, that fundamentally weakens the sector. It allows them to get stuff done, but the sector itself will be more vastly incorporated in debt. I take David's point that the likes of Standard & Poor's don't just look at us, but they did look at the entire sector and put up a 2 points raise, right? So we could be, even if we didn't have to increase our debt ourselves, we could still be the victims of a sector overall raising its debt, I'm assuming. So again, the quicker we can be reducing our debt and less affected by that broader potential rise, I personally think that's the better position that we would be in. But
Lawrence.
I have remembered my question. And it follows a little bit on from what David said, which was the question related to when do we zero our OPEX that's funded from debt? Because we know even in all of these models, at some point, at least year one, so even if you look at model 1, year 1, we're still funding 3.5 million of depreciation out of debt.
Mm-hmm.
The others, the other 17, same for model 2. Model 3, we're adding 4.7 to that, right?
Yep.
But at some point that all zeroes out. Now, is this the piece of work that you've still got going on to figure out for each of the models when we zero our OPEX?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But yes, it is. So what we're trying to bring back in a table is so the moment you drop down to 12%, you're borrowing $4.7 million to meet your expenditure, and then the following year you have to borrow another 4.7. So as the slide says there, it's not exact. We're still working out exactly, but it takes 10 years under model 3, option 3. It's 10 years before you can actually make significant debt repayments. So at a very back of the envelope, it's 8 or 9 years before you actually breaking even on under 3. Under 2, you're breaking even around about 6 or 7 years. Under 1, under 2, you're not borrowing at all. 1, you're not borrowing at all. Under 3, that's around about 9 years before you make a surplus. Under 4, it's around about 7 years. So that's why we've looked at, so if the starting position is 12, how quickly can you claw that back? And that's why we've looked at 12.7 and 12.8. Option number 5, you're actually repaying, I think it's 2 years to get back in the black. But we need to bring that back.
Yeah.
And we're trying to put that into the council paper.
Yeah. That's cool. I appreciate the work that's going on. Again, I'll acknowledge the work that's going on from staff and behind the scenes here. Just the other thing is we've been funding OPEX we've been debt funding OPEX for a long time. Is that right?
We have not been, yes, that's correct, because we have not been fully funding depreciation.
And over that period of time, Standard & Poor's has improved our credit rating.
Yes.
Even while we're debt funding OPEX.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I would correct that slightly. Well, not correct it, but provide a little bit of context more. So in the year that we went up, that was the year that we implemented the Green Line strategy, which was an aggressive attempt to get to a point where we were funding our depreciation. But the problem is that fell off track because of COVID and various other factors over the years. And that's when we started to slip. That's when we were on negative outlook. So I just don't want the impression to be that
Yep.
you can get away with not funding your depreciation with Standard & Poor's. because it was the fact that we'd planned to fund our depreciation that led to the improvement in our credit rating in actual fact. Am I right?
Absolutely right. Yep. The
Yeah.
Green Line strategy was all about net debt to revenue. It was reducing the net debt to revenue. So when we dropped below 250 is when we got the upgrade.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make a quick point for my esteemed colleague here. One of the dangers, I think, if you go from 17 to 12, is that the public will think they've had a win, and when in fact, actually, they haven't had a win at all. They'll have had a net loss. So, in terms of the transparency of what it means, you can see round this room where we've all taken our Panadol for the migraine that comes when you get too deep into this stuff. Trying to explain this just to the average punter is like really, really hard work. But if you say to people, instead of paying 17, you're only going to be paying 12, and they think, oh, that's fantastic. But actually, is it? No, and the short answer to that is no, it isn't actually, because you've got to pay for it at some stage. And in fact, you're going to be paying a bit more because there's debt servicing, yada, yada. So in terms of how transparent we are, I think that's really important to because of the LTP consultation process and the transparency that we had with that. I think it's really important to let people know what it actually means if you go this way or that way.
Yeah. Okay, have we had enough time? I don't feel like I've had enough time quite to absorb the 3-year view, because we've been sitting on that 10-year slide as far as I
Thank you. Thank you,
Do you want to take us through this?
Yes,
No?
I would love to take you through. So the 3-year view is because a long-term plan is refreshed every 3 years. So we thought it would be really good to see what's the situation in 3 years' time. So it's the same options. So if I talk to you about option 3, so compared to option 2, it's a $15 million reduction over the 3 years. It's rates affordability in year 3. In year 3 is sitting at 5.4. The debt headroom is 114. So not as good as option 2. It's got net debt of 300, so higher than option 1 and 2. It's got net interest of 14 million, same as option 2, a little bit higher than option 1. The total debt repaid in the 3 years is 0. And net debt to revenue is sitting at 202%, so slightly higher than options 1 and 2. Then we look at option number 4. It's reduced 11 million, so it's going up at 7%, so it's slightly less compared to option 2. Affordability is sitting at 5.5%. $124 million of debt headroom, so more than 3, not as good as 2. 297 is the net debt, lower than 3, higher than 2. Net interest is 13 million because you don't have as much debt. Option 4 allows us to actually reduce 3 million because we've got into a bit of now we've got into a surplus. And your net debt to revenue is 191%, so a lot better than 3. And then 5 is just even better. So you've obviously your rates revenue is going up more. So you've lost compared to option 2. There's $8 million reduction in revenue. Affordability we'd expect to be a bit higher at 5.6. Headroom of 133 million. So not as good as 2, but certainly better than 3 and 4. Net debt to 293, so lower than 4. Lower than 3, not as good as 2. Net interest is 13 million, same as 4. The total debt repaid, we would have reduced $6 million of debt. And so just to be clear, that's taking on $4.7 million as well to fund the shortfall in the Three Waters costs. And the net debt to revenue is 186%. So it's a slightly different view over the 3 year. Over 10 years, option 4 is really good. Over 3 years, option 2 is better. And that's because it's not taking on the extra debt. Still think option 5 is probably not affordable. Sitting in year 10, I think it sits at 7.8%.
So these debt reductions, rates revenue reductions, What is the impact of those in terms of being able to maintain levels of service inside what we've consulted on through the long-term plan process?
So at the moment, this table is assuming that the levels of service will remain the same, and to deliver on that, you're debt funding the shortfall. So when we drop 15 million, we're increasing our debts to maintain our levels of service. We aren't stripping costs out. So that's just the assumption we've made, as we haven't been told to reduce levels of service.
Okay, so that $15 million reduction or the $11 million reduction would be offset by the higher debt? Yeah, okay. Lawrence?
Can you help me here? I'm a little bit confused. The net interest payment, if you compare option 2 and option 4, we're paying more in interest under option 2 for less debt. Why is that? Is it rounding? I would have thought it'd be the other way around. That we'd have 13 million of net interest on 288 million and 14 million off 297 million. And then the total debt repaid, I would have thought those two boxes would be round the other way as well. Otherwise, 4 looks really attractive because we're paying off debt after year 3, even at going at 12%. That doesn't make sense to me. I would have thought 17 would have had 3 million on it. Sorry, I'm just a bit confused, that's all, by those figures. It's really helpful because I think we've got to talk about this because the challenge of council is we've got a 3-year term, and potentially what we're deciding on gets changed in 3 years' time depending on who sits around the table. So what impact have we made by these decisions if we don't ask this question? I don't know.
Thank you.
Just a question.
It
doesn't seem to line up in my head.
I'll try.
I'm not an accountant.
So what I believe the answer is, if we look at option 1, 17.7, it reduces $1 million. 17.6 is far less revenue, so it's not reducing any debt. So that's a 6% revenue increase year 2, year 3.
Yep.
So that doesn't reduce anything. Option number 4. So the question is, why is the net interest charge of 13 million lower than option 2 of 14 million? And it's because option 4 is reducing debt more because it's increasing revenue at 7%. So there's less debt, less interest. So dropping to 17.6.
We've taken a lump sum out with the 17 though. That was the whole thing at the 17. We've taken a lump sum out.
But when we went from 17.7 to 17.6, we strip out. I think it's $72 million worth of revenue.
But there's nothing in the change in rates revenue from
the change in rates revenue.
between 1 and 2.
I've just done the change in rates revenue on that table. So our starting position was last week we recommended 17.6.
Yep.
And so I just haven't updated the table to say what did we drop between 2 and 1.
Okay.
I've just gone back to last week's.
Okay. Yep.
So 4 has reduced more debt than 2.
But the total debt repaid. I'm confused. Because what you said before was it's taking us longer to pay back the debt in option 4 over the 10-year period than it is in the option 2 over the 10-year period. And yet that doesn't show here at the 3-year period. What?
So over 10 years, so we've just gone back to the 10-year slide.
Sorry.
Over 10
Am I the
years,
only
option
one that's
4,
confused?
over 10 years, option 4 reduces debt by 99 million compared to option 2 that does 63. And then, yeah, so in option 1 and 2, so option 1 and 2 is not increasing debt by 4.7, but it's going up at 6%, not 7%. So, so as we can see from that table, so 17.19 at 6%. So it's at 17.7 in year 2, we were able to fully fund depreciation and absorb our costs and start to retire some debt. That was $1 million.
Year 2. Yep.
And then in option 2 at 6%, we haven't been able to, because we've lost revenue, we haven't been able to reduce any debt whatsoever. So the interest charge is higher. But option 4 is actually able to, over the 3-year period, it's able to reduce debt by 3 million. Because of the 7 plus 7 plus 7.
No,
So
it's
it has a
12
massive.
It's 12 plus 7 plus 7. So there's only 2 lots of 7 as opposed to 2 lots of 6 on top of. So there's 17 plus 2 lots of 6, and then there's 12 plus 2 lots of 7,
Yes.
which intuitively you'd think that 17 plus 2 lots of 6 would
a higher
get you further
percentage.
down the track than 12 plus 2 lots of 7, because you're only adding 1% per year.
Yep.
Under one, whereas you've taken a chunk of 5% out under the other one. So I wonder if we just need to just double check.
We can double check.
Can
Yep.
we double check that
Yep.
table? I think we need to do that. I know.
So okay, we can have
Well,
a look at
that
that.
was an extra piece of information that we asked for at very short notice. So we'll keep working on that one, shall we? Shall we move on to the next slide for now?
So thank you. So look, there's a lot of slides that are a little bit repetitive, but I just wanted to show you on 17.6, which we know from last week's not on the table, but 17.6, that's just showing your the blue bars are your debt profile against your quantified limits. So as we can see, so we've always said to you, even under 17.7, it takes 6 or 7 years before you start to reduce debt, because you've got your CapEx program, you've got to fully fund depreciation. So we can see that we start to reduce debt over there. The difference between the blue bar and the red line is your debt headroom. So you can see we are reducing debt. These ones, I love these charts. This shows you year on year, if we weren't reducing debt, how much would we be taking on versus reducing debt? So you can see in the first year under 17.6, we aren't making any headroom on debt at all. In the second year, 17.6 isn't giving us any headroom. We still need 19 million. So sorry, the dark blue or navy blue is without reduction, and the lighter blue is, or teal, is with reduction. So in year 3, there's no reduction. We need $16 million for the CapEx program, and we draw down 16, 27, 28. No change in 28, 29. 29, 30 is where we start to see on 17.6. Instead of needing 20, we're starting to get that rate surplus. So we can rate fund 2, draw 18. So we started to reduce debt. Then when we get to 30, 31, we make a positive impact of debt reduction of 8 million. Then in 31, 32, instead of needing 12 million of debt, we've got that in rates. So we actually reduce debt by 12. We reduce debt by 17. And in the last year, instead of needing 3 million, we can fund that with rates and retire 22. So net impact 25. So that just shows you how we are actually reducing debt. So that's a lot slower than the 17.7, but that's what 17.6 looks like. then we look at 12.6. So we can see, you see a slight, the debt headroom, it's not as great. Your quantified limits are not as high because your rates revenue is not as high, and we're not reducing as much debt. So we can see in the out years we get quite close to our quantified limit, but again we start to reduce. So 12.6 is still reducing debt, and if we look at the repayment profile, you can basically see only in 31-32. So if we maintained this strategy, kept our operating costs as per budget, didn't spend a dime over that, and stuck to the plan, only in 31-32 we start to reduce debt by 5 million, by 9 million, and then by 17 mil. So again, it's just showing that we're reducing debt. So it's still sticking to the strategy, it's just less. And then 12.7, that's better. That's 12.6, creeping very close. So we're trying to create resilience for a future Kapiti. 12.7, you can see it in the chart. Looks a lot better, not as close, much more headroom. And then if we look at the debt reduction, we're starting to see a little bit of debt reduction in 25, 26. There's 1, there's 2, there's 4, there's 5, and so forth. So 12.7. So that just that 1% higher increase to rates has quite an impact. And then 12.8. I guess this is the dream, but you can see how we're far closer to the quantified limits, and we have so much more headroom. And then if you have a look at that profile, you can see that we start to really reduce our debt requirements. There's a $14 million reduction in 29-32. So it takes time. It takes a little while. We've got a big CapEx program, and so it takes a little bit longer. So I have a little bit of a summary for you. And we're actually, I think this is my last slide anyway. So the summary is, so option 2, which is 17.6. If we look at the 3-year view, noting that we need to just go and have a look at that issue, it outperforms options 3 and 4 over the first 3 years. And then if you look at the 10-year view, it actually sits in the middle of 3 and 4. But it does have a year 1 rates increase of 17%. Option 4, the 10-year view, it does outperform 2 and 3.
Can I just ask a question? Mark, you made the statement that 17.6 is not on the table. It might not be on the table today, but I'm pretty sure it'll be on the table on Thursday or something of its ilk. So, because it was on the table the other day. So I'm just working on the assumption here that that's not dead in the water. If it is dead in the water, we would need to know. So I don't think it is. That it strikes me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2 prudent financial courses available, one is 17.6 and the other one is 12.8, because it's our job to look to the future. Sophie's not here, but she made the point about generations to come, so, and I'm mindful of that as well. So am I correct in assuming that you, as a bean counter extraordinaire, would be offering up, if you had to pick 2, those are the 2 you would pick? That's a question.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. So look, we know that the resolution was to reconsider B and C. So by default, 17.7 and 17.6 are there. We consulted on 17.7. 17.6 was recommended last week because it was just mindful of the submissions. If the rates increase for year one is 12%, 12.7 certainly looks really good. 12.8's even better, but it's whether 12.8's actually affordable, sitting at 7.8%. The financial strategy will still say, no matter what you decide next week, the financial strategy will still say between 6 to 8 to give you flexibility. But in terms of all the options, this slide deck is really just saying 17.6 is what was presented last week. We went 12.6. 12.7 is better. 12.8's even better than that. But actually, 17.7 is also very good too.
Just a follow-up question on that is when you say it's better, better for whom? So you might want to make the case that for the ratepayer it's not better, but from a purely fiscal point of view it might be better. But if you're doing a Glen, Comrade Cooper, and you put that lens on it, to the ratepayer you might go, "Oh, actually, I think we'll take the bite in the first year and then a bit lesser in the outer years."
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Look, it's certainly better for, in terms of the intention of the long-term plan is to build a resilient future for Kapiti. We talked about a self-insurance fund. We aren't developing a self-insurance fund because we're using the headroom in terms of our debt capacity for that. We also know we've been through our budgets. We've kept staff. The budgets are pretty tight. We've got LGCI of 2.9%. We know that CPI was 7.5%. So the budgets are pretty tight. 17.7 allows us to cover our costs and reduce our debt. 17.6, we're taking on debt to do that. And then in the 12s, we're still taking on more debt to reduce debt. So for Council Link, 17.7, what the preferred option was in the consultation still stands, but we have to be mindful of what we received in the 371 submission. 17.6, you're still taking on debt.
Shelley?
So, if the 4.7 million, if we do the 12%, any of the 12%, and we've got more rates revenue, does that mean we're not going to then be borrowing 4.7 million each year, 2, 3, 4, 5, or are we going to pay it off with the money that we've made because we're now getting debt repayment? Like, what happened to that 4.7 which started this whole thing in the first place?
So that's what we're working on. So we're building a table that shows you what happens to the 4.7. So the moment you go 12%, you're definitely taking 4.7 on in year one. At 12.6, we believe you have to keep on taking on an additional 4.7 for 7 or 8 years. At 12.7, you don't have to take it for as long. You might take 4.7 million each year on year till about year 5. At 12.8, I think it's about year 4. So we're still doing the work on that modelling, and that's what we're wanting to show you. If you go to 12, how long and how much are you taking on by having to debt fund that 4.7 shortfall in year 1? 12.7 will be less. 12.8 will be even less than that. Yeah. Yes, we calculated on 4.7, it was 220,900. So over 5 years, that's $1 million of interest.
Okay. Any more questions, Liz?
Yes, look, I just still haven't seen anything to convince me that we should be taking the 12.7 or 12.8 option. I just think that for the ratepayer, it's going to be much more cost effective over the longer term to have that initial hit of 17 and then a lower annual increase beyond that. The other thing we have to bear in mind as well is that as we go forward, the rate of inflation is going to hopefully drop significantly, and those rate increases are going to look quite large in relation to the CPI down the track. And there could be some backlash with that, I would have thought. So I just think, to me, it goes without saying that the less interest you pay, the better off everybody is. And that means, to get into a position as quickly as possible where we're not debt funding our OPEX. I mean, to me, it's just prudent financial management. That's what you do.
Liz, we're kind of getting information right now. The debate will happen when it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. I won't debate it, but it would be really nice to see a slide that looks at things from a ratepayer's perspective. If we could have that by Thursday, that would be awesome.
So what would you like in the slide that hasn't been included in the pack today? We're going to get those some of that modelling just double checked. But apart from that, what other information would you like before Thursday?
Well, I guess it's really just looking at the rates increases over that period of time for the ratepayer, and of those increases, how much is being generated or is required to be generated to cover the additional interest that's being paid from the extra borrowing.
I think that question was just asked and answered. Did you hear that? I'm not sure that you could hear Nigel's question because he asked it without his microphone on, I think.
Oh, right.
So he asked what the interest cost was, and the answer was $1 million.
Okay.
Over how many years? 5.
But I think just to have something that really sets things out from a ratepayer perspective would be useful. I don't know what form that takes, but I think that I would find that helpful.
So I think so with Tuesday we've got the report. The report has already been generated for the council meeting on Thursday, and we have the information in front of us, which is going to be double checked and.
Okay, so there's no additional
that's available to us too, and then it's up to us as governance really to sift through that information and analyse what that means from ratepayers from our perspective, which I think is what Councillor Kirby was doing when he brought this option to the table in the first place. So
yep, sure.
Yeah, so
I guess it's about looking at taking into account the long-term perspective of the impact on ratepayers rather than just the immediate impact.
Yeah, I mean it's to some extent.
All right, I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I think that's a really good point to think about things from a ratepayer's perspective. For instance, Mayor Bernie Wandin has been sitting in a little room looking up every submission and doing a calculation as to what they'll be paying extra per week. So, looking up their properties and working out what extra they would pay according to their last QV. And interesting to hear some of those figures, which have been quite widely quoted. Nigel probably just covered my increase with the coffee he just bought me. But no, we really need to take this seriously and have a look at these figures, and I'll look forward to further discussions. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all the work that's gone into this. It's been a huge amount of number crunching, which is still going on. So thank you very much.
I just wanted to reiterate that too, actually, from the floor. To Mark and Cheryl, it must feel like it's coming out of left field to have all this numbers juggling at you all the time. So if we're asking questions that look like they're a bit harsh sometimes, they're not intended to be. It's just about because you want to get as much clarity as possible. So I'd rather ask a silly question than have doubt and then not know until later. So great job.
Yeah, and I far prefer to be doing this than discussing whether we should close the swimming pools, early in the morning and on Sundays and things like that. So, we're really trying to work out a way that we can way up looking after our communities and managing our finances in a way that enables us to do that. So it's hugely appreciated. Thank you.